In the silent hours before dawn, when the desert winds whispered across the rugged landscapes of the Middle East, a sound shattered the calm. The low, thunderous hum of massive engines cutting through the darkness. The unmistakable silhouette of the U.S. Air Force's C-17 Globemaster III appeared against the night sky, flanked by escort fighters. Its cargo was not simply equipment or humanitarian supplies. It carried men trained for missions that unfold in shadows. Night assault paratroopers. Iranian radar operators initially dismissed the faint signals. The C-17's approach was masked by electronic countermeasures and the noisy clutter of commercial air traffic. But as the aircraft drew closer to the strategic air corridor, alarms began flashing on Iranian screens. Something unusual was happening. Reports from military watchers quickly flooded online channels. A heavily armed U.S. transport jet was moving fast and low toward the Middle East. The Iranian command scrambled to identify its intentions. Was this another show of force, a simple message of deterrence, or the prelude to something far more dangerous? On board, the paratroopers sat in silence. Their faces were partially hidden under night vision goggles, their gear polished and checked to perfection. Each soldier carried enough firepower to operate independently if cut off, trained to parachute behind enemy lines, disrupt command structures, and secure key objectives before reinforcements could arrive. The mood was not one of fear but of sharpened anticipation. The men had been told only fragments of the mission. Insertion into a contested zone, with the possibility of immediate engagement. The whispers among them suggested Iran's sudden military buildup near oil-rich territories had triggered this covert deployment. News reached Tehran faster than the C-17 itself. Military analysts debated the implications on late-night broadcasts. Was Washington bluffing, or was this a signal that the United States had decided to cross yet another invisible line? Government officials issued stern warnings, but their tone betrayed unease. The Iranian public woke up to rumors spreading across social media. American paratroopers were already in the air. The lack of clear information only fueled speculation. Some believed this was an intimidation tactic. Others feared it was the start of a larger campaign aimed at destabilizing the region. Meanwhile, the international community reacted with urgency. In Brussels, NATO officials held emergency consultations. Moscow condemned the operation outright, calling it reckless provocation. In Tel Aviv, security experts suggested that Israel had been tipped off in advance, interpreting the move as a potential shield against Iranian-backed militias operating in Syria and Lebanon. Markets trembled. Oil prices spiked overnight, reflecting uncertainty in one of the most volatile regions of the world. Every analyst from Washington to Beijing agreed on one thing. The deployment of night assault paratroopers by C-17 aircraft was not routine. It was a message, delivered in the language of power. As the C-17 approached its classified drop zone, the cabin lights dimmed. A red light glowed near the cargo bay doors. The paratroopers rose in unison, securing their weapons, tightening straps, and checking communication devices. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, with only faint city lights flickering in the distance. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. Final approach. Brace for green. The soldiers exchanged silent nods. Their boots pounded against the steel floor as they moved into position. The rear doors opened and a rush of cold night air filled the aircraft. The vast darkness below seemed to swallow the men as they leapt one by one into the void, disappearing into the Middle Eastern night. From the ground, observers reported faint parachutes descending under cover of darkness. Iranian patrol units scrambled, unsure whether to engage or report. Conflicting orders slowed their response. By the time headlights swept the desert floor, the soldiers were gone, vanished into the terrain, leaving only footprints in the sand. Speculation ran wild in Tehran's military headquarters. Were these men there to sabotage, to gather intelligence, or to prepare the ground for a larger invasion force? No one knew for sure. The silence of the desert was more unsettling than open confrontation. Hours after the drop, U.S. officials refused to confirm or deny the operation. The Pentagon released a vague statement about routine training exercises, but few believed it. Independent trackers confirmed the flight path of the C-17, matching the timeline of the suspected operation. In Washington, leaks hinted that the mission's objective was not only military but also psychological, to test Iran's readiness and expose weaknesses in its response chain. If true, the operation had already succeeded. Iranian forces had been caught off guard, and the world had noticed. By sunrise, whispers of special forces already operating inside the Middle East reached intelligence circles across Europe. Iran moved additional troops toward suspected landing zones, but by then it was too late. The paratroopers had melted into the landscape, untraceable. What they were tasked to do remained unclear. Would they strike supply depots, capture high-value targets, or simply observe and report? Every possibility carried explosive consequences. The Middle East, already a tinderbox of rivalries, now faced an unpredictable new element. Elite American soldiers roaming under the cover of night, dropped from the belly of a C-17 Globemaster III. The world held its breath as the mystery deepened. Iran vowed retaliation if its sovereignty was violated, while Washington maintained strategic silence. Somewhere in the desert, paratroopers prepared their next move. And as the region braced for impact, one question lingered in every capital from Tehran to Washington. The Iranian desert stretched endlessly under the faint glow of dawn. Patrol vehicles moved in convoys across the rugged terrain, headlights piercing through the dust. Radio chatter filled the airwaves, fragmented, panicked, and uncertain. The paratroopers had vanished without a trace, and Tehran demanded answers. In hidden command centers, Iranian generals debated fiercely. Some urged immediate retaliation, calling the drop an act of war. Others feared a trap, suspecting the Americans wanted them to overextend and expose their defenses. Meanwhile, on the ground, every soldier knew one thing. Somewhere out there, invisible enemies were already watching. Miles from the drop zone, the paratroopers regrouped in silence. Camouflaged against the desert sands, they moved with precision, guided only by encrypted whispers through their comms. Each man knew his role: secure high ground, intercept communications, and prepare for possible strikes. Their night vision goggles glowed faintly as they scanned the horizon. A convoy passed nearby, Iranian trucks filled with soldiers, unaware that eyes followed them from the ridges above. The Americans didn't fire. Their orders were clear: observe, infiltrate, and vanish. But everyone knew that silence could not last forever. Back in Tehran, the Supreme National Security Council convened in an emergency session. Reports conflicted. Some said the Americans had landed hundreds of troops, others claimed it was a small diversionary force. Social media boiled with rumors, from sabotage of oil refineries to assassination missions against high-ranking commanders. The Iranian president appeared on state television declaring, "Any violation of our sovereignty will be met with force. We will not allow foreign soldiers to dictate our destiny." Yet behind the cameras, officials whispered of confusion and unease. Satellite operators in Europe detected strange bursts of encrypted signals from the desert, short, sharp transmissions that aligned with the suspected drop zones. Analysts in NATO command centers worked through the night, piecing together fragments of intelligence. What they saw suggested something more dangerous than a mere show of force. The paratroopers weren't scattered randomly. They were moving with intent, toward something. But toward what? Near an isolated oil facility, Iranian patrols stumbled upon faint footprints in the sand. Adrenaline surged, orders rang out. Trucks screeched to a halt, soldiers fanned into formation. Suddenly, shots cracked in the distance. Not a full-scale battle, but precise bursts. Controlled, deliberate. By the time the patrol regrouped, 2 of their vehicles were disabled, tires shredded, radios jammed. The Americans had struck, then melted back into the shadows, leaving confusion in their wake. In Washington, reporters demanded answers. The Pentagon maintained its stance. Routine operations. But leaks suggested otherwise. An unnamed official told journalists, "This isn't a drill, it's a test, and Iran just failed." In Moscow, outrage grew louder. Russian state media warned of a dangerous escalation, accusing the US of playing with fire in the Middle East. Oil prices surged again, and markets trembled under the weight of uncertainty. By the second night, whispers spread of sabotage. Power lines cut, communications disrupted, fuel depots mysteriously ignited. Tehran accused Washington directly, but proof remained elusive. Somewhere in the desert, the paratroopers watched silently, their mission far from over. The region braced for escalation, yet no one knew when or how the next strike would come. And in the silence of the desert, one truth became undeniable. The shadows now belonged to the Americans. The second night in the Iranian desert was unlike the first. This time, patrols weren't scattered or hesitant. They were hunting. Armored vehicles rolled across the dunes, drones buzzed overhead, and infrared scopes scanned every ridge. But the Americans had prepared for this moment. Hidden in natural depressions, covered by sand nets and silence, the paratroopers waited. Every man knew the signal. One word over encrypted comms, and the desert would erupt. Near a dry riverbed, an Iranian patrol picked up faint heat signatures. At first, they thought it was wildlife. But as they drew closer, their night vision scopes revealed silhouettes, figures too disciplined to be animals. Engines revved, rifles snapped into position. Orders rang out in Farsi. "Stop where you are! Hands up!" For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy. Then the desert exploded. Tracer rounds tore through the night sky, illuminating the dunes in flashes of red and green. The Americans moved with precision, firing short, controlled bursts, their night vision superiority giving them the edge. One Humvee went up in flames as an RPG whooshed from the ridge. Iranian soldiers scrambled for cover, shouting into radios, but their comms were jammed. Panic spread as the invisible enemy dictated the fight. Paratroopers shifted positions fluidly, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. Their tactics weren't about winning a pitched battle. It was about sowing fear, confusion, and delay. Minutes into the clash, Iranian reinforcements approached from the east. But the Americans anticipated this. Claymore mines detonated along a narrow pass, engulfing the convoy in fire. The shockwave rattled across the dunes. Through the smoke, shadows darted, paratroopers slipping away as quickly as they had appeared. By the time reinforcements secured the area, the battlefield was silent. Only wreckage, shell casings, and burning vehicles remained. Reports of the firefight reached Tehran within the hour. Commanders argued furiously on live military channels, some demanding retaliation against U.S. bases in the region, others warning that escalation would mean all-out war. The Iranian people, glued to their screens, saw images of burning vehicles in the desert. Rumors spread faster than facts. American soldiers had infiltrated deep into the country. Sabotage was imminent. Oil fields were next. At the White House, press conferences grew tense. Reporters asked, "Are U.S. soldiers engaged in combat operations inside Iran?" The spokesperson repeated the line, "We cannot confirm these reports." But insiders leaked a chilling detail to select journalists. The engagement was planned. The world was meant to see it.